I'll be saying something more if I bring them together. Getting carried away by your own thoughts, you'll be in trouble. Forget about the other thoughts. Even your own thoughts can put you in your trouble.
Before being a religion, before any protocols, rituals, and devotion, the Buddha's teachings are deeply rooted in being a response to the strains that are at the heart of the human conditions. And as a matter of fact, there's a great distinction between his teachings and other religious approaches to the human condition in the way that he's very direct, very thorough, and uncompromising in terms of being very realistic. He would tell you straight, this is how things are. And he's also telling you, do not believe me, just go and witness for yourself. The human condition carries these cumbersome aspects that create suffering, that there is attachment, that every phenomena is impermanent, and that beneath the surface of reality there is an existential sort of unwellness down that to its most fundamental causes. And there is Shiva, a university professor who teaches drama and theater at the University of Kathmandu. And interestingly, he approaches his teachings through the Buddha's teaching. He also takes his inspiration in the Bhagavad Gita. We are in South Asia, and the South Asian continent has been influenced by the Bhagavad Gita as well as by the Dhammapada and other great sages and philosophers. And that is where I'm taking you with the following conversation. It is all about Shakespeare, Hamlet, Socrates, Plato, and the Buddha's teachings. I hope you enjoyed it. Welcome to Dhamma on the Sidewalk, insights, interviews, and practical tips on the teachings of the Buddha for people of all walks of life, attuning, exploring, integrating the teachings in everyday life. Simple Dhamma for daily life. I'm Asoka, hosting Dhamma Capsule for people like you.
I teach the Western drama. I teach it as part of Western English literature. Literature written in English, we call it. We teach American drama, even drama by Wole Soyinka, the Nigerian playwright, and the British dramatists, and Indian dramatists writing in their language and it's translated into English. These plays also we teach to expose the students to the varieties of dramaturgy.
How do you get your inspiration?
Well, the Shakespeare is the one that we value most, and I came to realize that right after the canonical text that we often say in Nepal, in this part of the subcontinent, we say like Mahabharata, Ramayana, Veda, Dhammapada. These are the things we often regard as the canonical text. Next to them, if some writer who has cast heavy influence on us is Shakespeare. I often read Shakespeare's plays, something to be taught to the university, something of my own passion. And I read the Indic philosophy and Buddhism as separate something, my
Yeah.
passion. It occurred to me that I'll be saying something more if I bring them together. I mean, I came across some very serious studies on Shakespeare's plays, especially. I mean, there is a very strong tradition of reading Shakespeare's plays seriously. In fact, the literary criticism in English literature, if we take with Samuel Johnson, then Samuel Johnson begins with it with discussing Shakespeare's plays. So Colby's and all these great writers have started their, criticism kind of works with focus on Shakespeare's plays because Shakespeare is the starting point. In this part of the world, Shakespeare came through the British Empire, through Kolkata, that port it came. The Indian Bengalis, who were the first to receive Shakespeare's productions, they celebrated it because with Shakespeare there is a certain deeper way of understanding human mind, life. This is the history that, and then Shakespeare passes through the curricula that the British Empire designed to train the Bhadralok, the Bengalis, and the educated, the elites, let's say. And then Shakespeare was also introduced to Nepal, which was not colonized, but via the Calcutta-based educational route, theater route. What is that which fascinates us then about Shakespeare? Because in terms of language, Shakespeare's language is almost 5 centuries or 4 centuries long, has a long gap with the contemporary English speakers. If we look at Nepali readers and audience, we see a geographical gap, a linguistic gap, temporal historical gap, all social gaps. But still, there is some interest on Shakespeare's plays, and this is, I find that the Indic philosophies, especially Buddha's teaching, and if we go to Upanishads, even some parts of Astabhakra Gita, Dhammapada, Vedas, like somewhere, most of the texts look at how the human actions are driven by the thoughts, all right, driven by the thoughts. The Gita and even Buddha's teaching are about, come on, you got to detach even from your thoughts because if you keep on if you keep on getting carried away by your own thoughts, you'll be in trouble. Forget about the other thoughts. Even your own thoughts can put you in your trouble. So you have to learn to detach yourself. So detachment is something that, for me, I regard it as the DNA of Indic philosophy. Detachment. And then I thought of, why shouldn't I read then Shakespeare's plays with it? Then next thing I can just had an idea that, okay, if compassion is what Buddha teaches, right, we should all have compassion. Forgive your enemy, forgive all the bad thoughts that you carry. You have to forgive yourself because compassion is something that you need to develop, the attitude that helps you to purify your own mind, because with compassionate looking inside and looking outside, that that seals your soul, more or less, uh, creates a kind of sense of joy, happiness in you. Even if it's hypothetical, let's try it. All right. Then idea came to my mind: how do Shakespeare's plays deal this with compassion and this detachment. With compassion, I read Shakespeare's King Lear, all right, and I read Hamlet's soliloquy with the sense of detachment. Then it occurred to me that I'm saying something new for me because I've never, I've never imagined or thought that I'll be landing at that interpretation because I kept reading Indic philosophical texts because of my own passion, and I read Shakespeare's plays because of my own passion because Shakespeare, teaching Shakespeare is our karma, and then along with that, reading Shakespeare's plays is something the the pilgrimage, the kind of pilgrimage that you go to the holy places. That's why the Shakespeare's plays are like, if you don't read Shakespeare's plays, how can you call yourself an academic on Western literature? That's the challenge I developed myself. So,
When I met you at the coffee shop the
yes,
other last time,
yes,
I met you with all the Buddha discourses. So it's not just the Dhammapada.
yes.
The Dhammapada is just a small part of it. You had all the commentaries, the longer discourse, the short discourse, the connected discourses. How does that combine?
Well,
It was
you
just for
know,
inspiration, or
I had downloaded these Nikayas and read it, and it didn't fulfill my, the desire, deeper desire. Holding books is like meeting real people.
yeah, that's a nice way of saying it. Yeah,
The holding books is like
nicely said.
reading. It is right there, and it occupies the space, all right, and then you touch it, you feel it, and then, well, I had read Dhammapada and long back, and I keep on reading Dhammapada whenever I feel like, okay, let's read something good. It's quite an inspiring book, and it helps to know who you are, where you are in terms of existence, because the magnitude of thought matters. Everyone thinks, but what is the magnitude of our thought? That's something that we need to often,
And consciousness.
yeah, consciousness. Yes.
Yeah, the thought and then consciousness and all the senses.
The Madhya Nikayas and Digha Nikayas and the other texts by Buddha's teaching, I always wanted to grab them, and then, but then Pali I can't read, you know, and, well, I don't trust the translations of the text into other vernacular languages because I'm not exposed to the vernacular studies in Buddhism. So English is the thing that I trust because it's where scholarship is given priority, where it goes through peer review process, and that's why reading English translation is something that I prefer. And sometimes I also go for Hindi translation as well. How have the the writers done? The people writing in Hindi also have really, developed a certain sense of fine quality in translation because it needs a lot of passion. The publication houses and all editing process. It's a real work, and that's what we haven't achieved in Nepali and other vernacular Nepali languages. That's what I agree. I may be wrong. I hope I'm wrong because I want to see the. And then what I'd like to then.
But then you met the books you had. These are the one of the most um, highly valued translation. This is from Bhikkhu Bodhi.
Yes,
So everyone in Buddhism who's who's looking at the source is going to that. That's an invaluable work that he's done with that translation. I mean, monks, monastics of all traditions have
yeah, yeah,
gone into Bhikkhu Bodhi's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
translations because he's done that with in Sri Lanka.
Yes.
So
Look, people suggested me to hold the other translated copy as well, but I didn't feel like after going some pages. And Bhikkhu Bodhi also mentions in his introduction that though he doesn't neglect the earlier translated version, but he has worked on it. That's what he says.
yeah, he's put
Yes.
an amazing work
Yes.
on that. Um, so there are cardinal suttas and cardinal suttas, so the root suttas,
Mm-hmm.
and then there are more like mundane suttas that are, let's say, everybody. It's like you said, you can't be a proper academic if you haven't had
Shakespeare.
Shakespeare in your curriculum. So the same would go for some suttas. The current one, the mundane one, they're kind of condensed suttas that are regularly used.
Okay.
And some of them are, like for instance, the Metta Sutta, the Buddha's words on love and kindness.
Oh yeah.
It's a PhD on its own. It's just a few 50 line or something, a page and a half, and there's everything in there.
Okay. Codified.
It's everything. It applies 2,600 years ago, and it applies
Now.
today, and the whole philosophy is there. The whole sense is not just be kind and do this. It gives you really, it points into all the directions where to start being, as you said, compassion inside, compassion outside, being a good human being. I think it's a very unique approach you have, and I
Yeah.
think it's quite not mundane, no?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Not everyone does that.
These books that I was holding that day, like I wanted to buy them long back. Then I wrote to Wisdom, probably thinking that they would send some free copy. They said that we don't have it. We've been to Bhadra Book Shop there, and he said it like, my friend, it costs around about 40, 50,000. I don't have that much money. The Buddha knows that I don't have any money, so now I'm not going to buy it. And then I I was like browsing, like surfing my Facebook, and one of my friend students, with a Buddhist, I saw him like taking photo of the Candy Beach and in Sri Lanka, and I wrote him, "Hey, bring me all these books." And then he says, "Sir, are you?" And he sent me a photo. "Sir, are you talking about these books?" "Yes, these are the books that I really need." "Okay, I'll bring it. It costs some money." "Okay, bring it." And so this how I got them. And the thing that I really want to explore is not that like detachment as the romantic side. My point is that the fact that all the texts, Upanishads, Vedas, Mahabharata, Gita, and Dhammapada, and all the Nikayas that I have read and have understood so far, they highlight the importance of detachment. Then it came to my mind that then detachment must be a very difficult thing. Achieving detachment must be a very difficult thing, because had it been easy thing, all right, all these shastras, all these texts wouldn't have given so much emphasis on it. And then I tried to look at why Hamlet suffers in his soliloquy. So he finds very difficult to detach from his own ideas. There I found two tradition meeting. So Hamlet for me is a dear guy, because he he teaches me the alternative, all right, the same thing from alternative perspective. Whereas the teaching from this part of the world is like more making one a cautious about involvement, but it doesn't like give for example, everyone goes to Buddha and finally the Buddha effect wins, Buddha effect wins, and then even Arjuna goes to Krishna effect wins. They get that point. But
Yeah.
how to live with the turmoil,
Yes,
and
yes,
Hamlet is, I
yes, yes,
see,
yes, yes.
living with the turmoil, and melting like a plastic and becoming something else. And for me, Shakespeare says is also saying that, come on, no matter how poetic you may be, how philosophical you may be, handling with your own, or on your emotion is very difficult and dangerous. Anytime the life can go into
Yeah,
those.
it's called the Four Noble Truths. But you can also call them the Four Knowledges.
Yeah,
Four recurrent events that touch human life as well as all life, but suffering in a way or another, impermanence, and the fact that we connected to that there is a very strong sense of self. So identifying to exactly this reality that I'm creating, it's me, this is me, and I can grasp to a very almost a physical self, which also that's even that can go, even the self can go, and then suffering, impermanence, and obviously the way out of all that is to learn to investigate the mind, and then you start untying all the knots. So you can have a look, for instance, at the 12 links of dependent origination, which are actually all about, yes, detachment and clinging. And the 12 links of dependent origination start with not wanting to see how it is, so delusion, or it's called also ignorance. And from that, everything trickles down and it comes to attachment, feelings, the senses, wanting to be, yes, I am. I am like this. I exist. I am like this. And continuing and not wanting to see through the veils of our own mind. So yeah, he was, the Buddha was,
yeah,
he
yeah,
was a scientist, and he was a very special person, just to put it in simple words. And somehow when you look at the world today and you look at human mind, even maybe from your own students, and now I like the fact that you say how you're reading Shakespeare through that mind, it comes back.
yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, have you read anything about the fact that there were contacts in ancient India and in the, in the ancient um, Mediterranean basins between Greek philosophers and Buddhism, and then there were a lot of monks, monastics who were Greek monastics in India. That's why I had mentioned to you to have a look at the 100 Questions to King Milinda. That's part of,
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
that book?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So there were exchanges. So for instance, there were influences between Socrates, Plato, and Buddha. Even if they were not living at the same, they were not contemporary, they were influences. And that's because it didn't, all the texts that you mentioned, all those civilizations that emerged from the Vedas and emerged from the Upanishad and from the Dhammapada, they were not in a closed vase. They were trade exchanges. They were, people traveling through from Southern Europe to India. So there have been exchanges as well, intellectual exchanges. And yeah, have you heard about that?
Well, the philosophical connectivity that I can link, when the Greeks often repeat the philosophical statement that to be born itself is yes, a kind of the dukkha, suffering, because the greatest thing, like joyful thing in this world would be not to have born. And Buddha also says that suffering is inevitable. So
Impermanence is inevitable.
inevitable,
Attachment is inevitable.
inevitable. So
And having a strong sense of self is inevitable as well.
inevitable. So, and then the other point is Euripides, that play called the Bacchus. The Euripides, a play, the Bacchus, which is about the Dionysus, the god. He comes in that play. The god comes from Asia. Yes, the god is like someone like in Asia, and he's traveling to from Asia to Greece. And the Alexander is supposed to have marched to Punjab and then passed to even the southern part of India. It is historically proven.
Yeah.
And there was a photo of a National Geography of a particular community in Afghanistan with a blue eye. You know, the photo says that these were the children of the soldiers of Alexander. A few hundred of them decided to stay there and live their life, and they got assimilated into the localities and still. So there are, I mean, if we regard Afghanistan as the place where Vedas were written, and even the Mahabharata story carries lots of references from that area, and Afghanistan is connected to Iran, and if you cross that border,
Go to Europe.
go to Europe. And like walking was something that people had to depend on, and coming to the sea and taking the sea was almost impossible from Afghanistan to, you know, that's why definitely mobility was something occasional, not regular, but occasional and substantial, we should say. And with Silk
The
Road,
Silk Road.
yes, definitely when the Indian and Chinese economy were the dominant forces in the global economy, and if Turkey was connected, means next to Turkey is the Greeks. So therefore, there was some kind of connectivity, definitely. But even in philosophy, we see that they are more or less saying the same thing, because the fundamental thing about, like, you know, one reads Oedipus, something Sophocles developed out of the epic by Homer. The the play ends with, like, this is the desire in you, the thoughts in you. These are the karmas. All right, these are the karmas. The thoughts are the karmas, and you have to pardon whatever terrible things that you do. You have to pardon and go for, because life is mental. I mean, you were given this life because you suffer, and you know how to suffer and endure. If you endure it, you develop all, like, light inside. And Oedipus is like closer to Buddha for me, because he endures all pain, humiliations. You get that point? And at the end of the play, he is an angel. In the third play written by Sophocles, the Oedipus, who happened to kill his own father and marry his own mother and breed like children, this man turns like becomes an angel because his soul is taken to heaven. So there is a mukti, there is a liberation in it. So yes, moksha, yes, right. So there is always, with Buddhism, I can take a like old tool, because it's about human, precisely very human condition. Well, to tell you frankly, I'm tired with the Shakespeare's criticism, like scholarship on Shakespeare, especially too much politicizing, like feminist digging out feminist issues, the post-colonial issues, the Marxist issues. This reading somehow radicalize your reading, radicalize your finding, but then what about the soft being human, the human part that the fundamental thing is that you are here to commit error. You
And
are
you will,
here.
and you will.
You will. What are you all going to do? What are you going to do? Because you are born to commit error and then learn from that. Without committing error, there is no road ahead. So if this is, then we need a different approach, because politicizing Shakespeare's studies, like in terms of gender, class, it's okay if you want to create a just society where everyone is equal, egalitarian, democratic society. We all have to speak for that. But then the fundamental thing is that primeval, the primordial energy that we all carry, it weighs the same. It weighs the same everywhere. Even in the ancient time, it weighed the same, and it still it weighs the same. But we haven't solved the mystery. We haven't solved the riddles.
Nicely said, yeah.
Yes, we haven't solved the riddles. That's why I think that with Buddha, we understand art and philosophy and literature very well, and that's why I.
That's why you have it.
Yes. Otherwise, I think that criticizing, like taking few lines from Shakespeare's plays and taking a feminist approach or subaltern approach or a post-colonial approach, and you bombard few words, done. You finish with a term paper or a journal
Actually,
article.
yeah, it's a very good point because the Buddha was not Buddhist.
You were not Buddhist. You were not
The
Buddhist.
Buddha was not a Buddhist. The Buddha was just a smart guy.
A smart guy.
A
He,
really smart guy who really tried and start sharing like 5% first. And then said, you don't believe me? This doesn't work? Okay, then I continue. And he said, and also that's why he didn't want to teach. You know that, right?
yeah.
He didn't want to teach. And he said, I found out this thing, and okay, are you going to teach now? Nobody will believe me. This is really too complex. It's too tricky for the mind. It's too intricate to go and tell people, look at your own mind and detach from this and detach from that and do this way. It's not. And then eventually he accepted to do it, and that's why proselyting is not part of the Buddhist tradition.
Exactly.
Because he didn't want, it's not about go and give the word to people. It really is, no, just keep it for yourself. But eventually, in the history, it says, okay, I'm gonna give teachings, but that's why still today, to receive a teaching from a monastic, you need to request it. You won't see any Buddhists outside with pamphlets and distributing
No, no.
pamphlets. So I think it's a very clean way of doing it.
More like turning inward.
Yes,
Turning
exactly.
inward.
Yes.
And once you turn inward, you turn to your own emotions and your feelings, right? We have to turn, like, because turning inward is what philosophies, arts, and literature, like, they teach. Because only the dictators and the capitalists are the ones who tell you go, like turn outward, conquer, all right, grab it, hold it. What is I mean, we can't avoid them because this is samsara. We have to turn outward and inward both. But turning inward is like knowing the color of your own thoughts and emotions and where the genesis comes from. And once you start like fathoming into the mysteries that you carry, the turbulence you carry within, you understand like there is a chances that meeting Buddha within you, and you can't claim that. Well, I have seen the light, so I am big. You can't, because the Buddhism denies that too. Because he said that you can't claim, you can't You can't claim that, because if you claim that, you come into samsara again, because that's, you realize that. I think that that's beautiful about knowing the values of being human
Yes.
and limit that you have
And
to.
also the influence that we can have, it goes beyond just even the human. I don't know if you came across the guidelines. The Buddha knew how to speak to every person of every walks of life. So he could speak to a farmer, he could speak to a merchant, he could speak to someone who has no clothing, to someone who is a big, healthy, wealthy uh, individual. And that way, it means there is a system of governance that you can put into practice, not just for yourself, but also, and that's where the figure of Ahsoka comes into the picture, the King Ahsoka or
Yeah,
Emperor
yeah.
Ahsoka, and the importance of his coming across in India, as there are guidelines as to how to run a country. In those years, run a country means my territories, right? So between brackets, my Magadha area, or my King Ahsoka's territory, which was more limited than it is today. But if you look at those guidelines, so the same ethic that you use for yourself and for your family, you can expand it. You
Mhm.
take care of the animals, and you can make sure that
Exactly.
the redistribution of resources is for everyone, and it's called Dharma governance. It has a microcosm
Yeah,
and has a macrocosm,
yeah, I agree. I agree.
and it starts with us,
From, yeah, yeah, it
with
is start,
ourselves, right? How
because
to be a better human. How to be a better human. Also, these days is sometimes is just sense. Okay, I let it go. The word "let go" is often associated as an equivalent to what you mentioned earlier, detachment.
little,
Letting go and detachment are not the same.
no,
Letting go can have a sort of subtle idea of it's okay, you're not looking at it, it's very superficial. But learning detachment and non attachment has very deep roots. Everything, that person, the karma of that person, the imprint of that person from a past life into a next life has it's enormous. So that let go is just the tip of the iceberg.
exactly. You know,
So
it's like, we all are traveling through the fog, and when we talk of light and think of light, chances are that we might feel some flash of light. Otherwise, we have to keep on traveling through the fog. You know, people who, when, even like ordinary person like you and me, when we happen to commit certain error, under the spell of one error, we start committing many, many errors, and then suddenly we feel that it has caused a net, and we are trapped within it. And next moment when we feel that, okay, I should untrap myself, and this is, we all are very poor fellow, caught into our own emotional net.
and everything is focused on that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yes, yes,
yeah.
yes, 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 yes.
That's why when we see somebody suffering, struggling to earn certain happiness, there's always a chance to share and feel each other the bond. I think you and me meet at this level because we are, we are not, I mean, like, kind of, okay, come, disciples, stay here, and in a kinds of guru, because you know searching for light is something that searcher, someone who is searching, meets with someone who is also searching.
In Tibetan Buddhism,
Yes,
this is called entering a mandala. So
exactly.
there's a sort of cosmic mandalas. So you meet the persons and you meet the realities that you are most attuned with,
Exactly.
and there are, it's not a two dimension, it's not even a three dimension, it's probably a four dimension, and it moves around like that. And so we all have something to, and that's also a quality that is emphasized in the Buddha's teaching, is the quality of listening and the quality of talking to you, we both conversing with you, I would say. We both learn, we both listen, and we both learn. There's no really I know better or I know more. It's more like an exchange, and it's very difficult these days. Everyone has an answer to everything, as though it was like the biggest truth. No, as you said, starting already from even Socrates and Plato, it was like there is suffering in the world, there is suffering in the mind, there is suffering in human beings, and that suffering comes from
Yeah.
doing things in this certain way. Then, I think also culturally, there's a cultural context that has made some of these philosophies develop in certain ways. Like in Greece, it became, democracy. What is democracy today, and how does it connect to democracy as it was at its emerged when it was in Greece? Probably a completely different story,
A
right?
complete different story. It just lasted for 50, 60, 70 years. Then again, the Romans took over.
Yeah, so, but I mean, that's how it is, right? So the cultural context of where these teachings came had a lot of influence. These days, there's a lot of discussion also in Buddhist circles, about certain rules and certain recommendations that were made by that are found to be made by the Buddha. Do they still have a relevance for today? So sometimes you need to adapt. Like, for instance, the monks were beggars in India. They were mendicants, and they were going around on alms round, they getting the food without shoes. You can't do that when you are a monastic in northern Canada somewhere, because you're going to freeze to death. You have to have shoes. So there are a number of adjustments that have been made, but at the core,
Exactly.
at the root, at the real core of everything, all the issues are
It's the
exactly the
same.
same.
Same riddle,
Same,
yeah.
same riddle. Is there anything else that the way you opened the conversation with talking about Shakespeare and how you came to be inspired by not just the Buddha's teaching, but as well, the Bhagavad Gita, the rishis of India. How can you leave us in this conversation with some other inspiration?
Okay.
What else would you like to add?
We have to, like, think of, accepting every one of us, despite all religion, gender, nationalism, all kinds of ideologies and all kinds of isms,
And labels.
labels. A person is, we have to accept the fact that every person is trying to struggle with his or her own emotions. So everyone is a poor guy because having very hard time dealing with his own personal emotions and ideas. This this cosmopolitanism, this that everywhere we find it, this is somehow missing in global politics, in the geopolitical divide, all the kinds of the contemporary chaos, political chaos, the economic, all this
The greed.
greed. There,
Yeah, the
like,
greed, the hatred. There's a lot
I
of
think,
violence, even amongst humans. I'm
yeah,
saying,
yeah,
not just even at a political
yeah,
level. There's a lot of
exactly.
violence. Yeah.
And That's why I think that we have to. I mean, we can't form a political party or launch a movement for this. It's all thing we have to do quietly, you know, peacefully. I think that there is a need to look human beings as caught in inner storm. We all are caught in a, and we all have hard life. We have to understand that we all are trying to adjust, trying to search some light. And you say that the mandala that we all want to, yes. That's why embracing each other, i- like sending some compassion to each other, is what we need along with, because we can't stop politics, we can't stop economic activities. They have to go.
You can get as angry as you want with
Yeah,
politics. It won't change, right?
because every year there will be war. We can't stop it because our, what we want to like highlight is that we have to understand that there is fundamentally no difference between you and your enemy, because we all are grappling with the same problem. The anger is killing every one of us, causing us suffer. The jealousy that we carry, the desires of all kinds and colors that we carry, they all make us suffer. So, and we commit mistakes. So there is fundamental. There is no difference between you and me and others. And this is very hard to to teach.
Yeah, that's also the it's difficult to teach. It's
Yeah.
difficult to explain to people.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
core of emptiness.
Emptiness.
And emptiness is the core of compassion. When you can see that emptiness of there is no inherent reality happening, then you can only have compassion for other people, because there is no nothing to hold on to.
Maybe like almost all of us live through the reality. I mean, we'll keep on asking the questions. My God, why did I do that? This. I mean, like we all become the victims of the angry questions that we throw on ourselves. So we all are living with bleeding, in this existence. That's why, I mean, let's do our karma. That's what we can do it, because we can. If a poem can, if a poem can bring changes in a society, and art piece can bring changes in the society on the same ground, the teaching of Buddha and all these things can bring changes in the society.
Thank you. And the last is this is Shiva
Yeah.
and Ahsoka having a conversation in a coffee shop in Kathmandu, which also is a special place. Nepal is a very special place. So thank you so much, Shiva.
Thank you, Ashoka.